Hello, I'm back again to tell another chapter of my story called Look in the Shadows. This is chapter 12 called Total Surrender, and I'm Sandra Barker. It was not long after I started attending the 10 a.m. morning service at my new church that an announcement was made about a missions trip planned for North Sulawesi later in the year. Interested people were being asked to put in their applications. A team was going up to visit the work of a foundation called Bridge of Hope. It was an NGO that had been started by a couple of businessmen who had heard about the plight of refugees in the area. They were people who had fled the massacre of 1999 in the islands to the east of that area, and many had ended up in North Sulawesi. They had nowhere to live, no way of making a living, and no hope for the future. Bridge of Hope was a microfinance organisation that helped people to start up small businesses by giving them tiny loans. Many of the people had previously been the victims of loan sharks who charged exorbitant interest rates that prevented people from ever repaying their loans. I could not believe what I was hearing. It was less than a year since I had started attending this church, and already there was an opportunity to do an overseas missions trip. I could not believe my ears. It was what I had dreamed about. It was what I was searching for. And it was not on the other side of the world, but just to the north of us in Indonesia, a country I was terrified of, but I was ready to take on the world. I was ready to go anywhere. Just tell me where to go, God, and I'm in. I grabbed an application, filled it out, and put it in the offering bag. This is how we would give notices to the office in my old church, and so I assumed it was the same here. It was sure to find its way to the office. I then waited patiently to hear back from whoever was organising the trip. I waited and waited. Some weeks passed by, and I wondered why I did not hear anything. Then, finally I found out who was organising the trip and asked them about how the applications were progressing. I had to have been the first one to put in an application, so I knew I had to be on the top of the list. The lady involved very kindly said to me, "I'm sorry, but all of the places have been filled. We can only take a certain number of people, 12 I think it was, and there were no more vacancies. All of the places had been filled." I don't think that any announcement could have shattered me more. I was devastated. I had put in my application straight away. It was impossible for me not to be at the head of the list. How could I possibly have missed out? I don't think there is any moment in time that has shattered me more. Not before and not since. I felt such rejection. I must have looked like a dog with its tail between its legs. I don't think I have ever felt so much disappointment. It was not so much that I had missed out on something, but rather that it was so spiritually significant. It was about honouring what God had asked me to do. By this time, I was sure that God had given me the job at Woolworths, and I was sure that God had brought me to this new church. So why would this opportunity be taken away from me when I had done all that I could do? I had no choice but to place the matter right back in God's hands. I told God that if he did not want me to go, then I accepted it. It was up to him if I was to be on this trip or not. I completely handed myself over to him. There was nothing else that I could do. I had made myself available, but no door opened. And even when I thought that there was an opening, it would slam shut in my face. I felt totally lost, totally helpless. Maybe all that I thought that I'd heard from God was just my own imaginations. There was nothing that I could do other than surrender myself totally into his hands. There was not much for me to do ministry-wise in the new church, except to go on an occasional women's meeting, and I helped out in children's ministry, teaching a small handful of children each Sunday. I would make elaborate PowerPoint presentations to present my messages. I don't think teaching children was ever my calling, but it at least gave me something to do. The weeks, and maybe it was months, passed by. I don't really remember. But one day I received a message. There had been a cancellation, and I could go on the missions trip. I'm not sure exactly how I felt. I was careful not to get too excited in case there was another setback. But I did know that it was now the will of God. But not all would flow smoothly. It never does. The biggest disappointment of all was just waiting around the corner.